This is Miller Philosopher, and in part 1, I explored whether Fingolfin was truly trying to undermine Fëanor when he appealed to their father to rein him in. In this second part, I want to look at what happened after that confrontation, and whether Fingolfin's later reconciliation with Fëanor was genuine or bullshit. Part 1. The aftermath of the threat. After Fëanor threatened Fingolfin in front of Finwe, the Valar basically now had no choice but to act. Fëanor was therefore sentenced to exile from Tirion. But what shocked everyone wasn't the punishment necessarily, but was Finwë's response. He chose to go with his eldest son, and not just him, but also Fëanor's sons as well. This wasn't just a father supporting his child, it was a king stepping away from his people and leaving Tirion effectively leaderless. And it was probably around this time, too, that Fëanor and Nurdnel finally separated, now unable to bridge the growing divide that had been growing for a while now. So, therefore, the question is, was Fëanor sincere in accepting his brother's allegiance? Part 2. The Valar attempt reconciliation. At some point, the Valar bring Fëanor back to determine whether this grudge can now be buried. And it's at this point that he does not just let the past go, he goes further than anyone expected. He swears allegiance to Fëanor, politically and personally as brothers, even though he arguably didn't really have to do so and would have been justified in doing that. But the real twist was when Fëanor accepts it. Of course, it's right after this moment that the court receives the devastating news that Melkor has returned, the Silmarils have been stolen, and Finwe, the only one who dared stand against Melkor, had been murdered. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to focus on the reconciliation before news of that tragedy arrived. Because the question is, was Fëanor sincere in accepting Fingolfin's allegiance? Part 3. Fingolfin's sincerity. This is the easy part. Throughout the Silmarillion, Fingolfin consistently comes across to me as someone who genuinely wants his older brother's acceptance. He wants unity and he wants peace, and that desire carries forward even into his later relationship with Maedhros, Fëanor's eldest son, after Fëanor is killed and he basically takes over that particular faction of the Noldor. Fingolfin is the kind of person who keeps trying even when it hurts. So yes, for Fingolfin's part, his reconciliation was absolutely sincere. But the real question is, what about Fëanor? Fëanor is harder to read, but if we go by precedent, he is brilliant, arrogant, and volatile, but he's also incredibly straightforward. Fëanor never hides what he thinks, whether it's his opinions about the Valar, his stepfamily, his father, the Noldor's manifest destiny, or whatever it might be. He broadcasts all of it, and gives zero fucks about who may think otherwise. Even when he stood before the Valar to receive his sentence of exile, he didn't plead, he didn't apologize, but he didn't blow up either. He was defiantly silent. Zero fucks given is Fëanor's personal motto. So then, if Fëanor accepted Fingolfin's oath, I think he meant it. This was the beginning of a tragically short moment where the two brothers were finally aligned. So what changed, if that's the case? What was it that made the only son of Miriel and Finwe accept his brothers, who were the sons of Finwe and Indis? Part 4. Revisiting accusation. To understand this, we need to briefly go back to their final fight. Fëanor's core accusation was simple. He believed that Fingolfin was trying to usurp his place in the family and in their father's heart. And Fëanor knows his brother. He knows Fingolfin is not one to bullshit. He isn't subtle. He isn't manipulative. So, when Fingolfin, therefore, publicly swears allegiance both personally and politically, that therefore redresses all of Fëanor's deepest fears and, which isn't mentioned but definitely is the case, kills Melkor's lies to Fëanor with regards to his family. Fingolfin is saying in front of the Valar and the Noldor, I am not trying to replace you, and I acknowledge your place in the Noldor. I acknowledge your authority. For someone as proud and as wounded as Fëanor, that mattered. Part 5. What happened during the exile? There's also the question of what the Elf Lords were thinking during Fëanor's exile. What was it that finally brought them to this place of reconciliation, given their long history of fights and family drama? Did Fëanor reflect on the fact that Fingolfin wasn't actually trying to steal his place? Did Fingolfin finally reach a breaking point, realizing that the rivalry had now escalated to something that he never wanted? We never get those actions directly, but the reconciliation suggests that, for the most part, both prideful brothers had time to think it over, and that both came back, somewhat at least willing to try again. And for the Noldor, that's saying a lot. Part 6. The tragedy of what might have been. Either way, I believe the reconciliation was genuine on both sides, and that's what makes what happens next, Melkor's theft of the Silmarils and the murder of Finwe, even more tragic, because it raises a haunting what-if question. You guys know how much I love those. What if Melkor had not struck when he did? And what if the brothers therefore had the time to rebuild the relationship? What would the Noldor have become if unity and not division had guided them? Now that's a question for another video, but for now, the answer to this one is clear. Fingolfin's reconciliation was sincere, and Fëanor, for once, accepted it with an open heart. This is the Miller Philosopher. Have a good day.